Chapter 9. Madurai reached a conclusion. There was some kind of secret hiding in that notebook.
Yes, that must be it. There is no such thing as precognition. She's been insistently writing in that notebook of hers despite the fact that terrible things are going to happen to her if she's caught. Which means her secret must be in there.
Madurai could not imagine what that secret was, but he was certain that there was one.
Which means, if I snatch it away, everything's going to be fine.
Madurai hadn't always been prone to complicated thoughts. He has often been told that contrary to his looks, he was a cautious man, but that wasn't a trait he was born with. It was simply necessary for the job he had until recently. But now, that job was meaningless.
It was my fault. It was because I couldn't protect them.
The only job that mattered now was finding the culprit responsible for the worst, largest incident in Hope's Peak Academy's history, and getting revenge.
I can't afford to stand still. Not now.
Madurai started running again, and thought about what he had to do next in simple terms.
Catch my prey, hurt her, make her talk.
Now thoroughly serious, Madurai ran with all his power in the directions his prey had fled. He may have lost some time, but it was not yet a fatal loss. Even if she managed to escape, all he had to do was to keep chasing her. As long as he didn't give up, it wouldn't be over.
Catch, hurt, talk.
He repeated those 3 words to himself, slipping through the dark trees like a black snake. He was paying careful attention to his surroundings as he ran, and suddenly, his field of vision expanded. He arrived at a small clearing that looked like a plaza. He surveyed the area, and soon noticed a small prefab shed on the other side of the clearing. Light from a street lamp next to the shed flickered continuously, creating an ominous atmosphere right out of a horror movie. Suspicious. Very suspicious. But even so,
it would be faster to investigate than to wonder what's going on.
Madurai reduced his speed and stepped carefully towards the shed. Its cream-colored walls and roof would normally seem pleasant, calming even, but under the flickering light they just seemed eerie. Madurai stood in front of the shed and started by peeking through the window set in one of the walls. The room in front of his eyes was dusty, matching the flickering light coming from above. It must be used for storage by the custodian of the central plaza. There were shelves packed with fertilizer bags and paint cans, as well as cleaning tools cramped all over the place. He couldn't see anyone inside, but there were a lot of places someone could hide. Madurai turned away from the window and headed to the shed's entrance. The door was wooden and light. He first touched it with just his fingertips, and once he confirmed it wasn't booby-trapped, he turned the handle. It didn't open. Someone must have locked it. Madurai crouched and observed the grass growing around the shed. Patches of the ankle-high weeds were bent at their tips. Someone had stepped on them recently.
Well, that settles it.
However, this certainty did not come at all as a relief. Quite the opposite. The cautiousness Madurai had briefly forgotten returned in full force.
So what kind of trap has she prepared for me?
Madurai took a couple of deep breaths. Then right after he let the deepest one out, he turned to the door and kicked it with all his strength. Wham! The door opened just a little bit, making a dull noise. Wham wham. After a few more kicks, the gap in the door was wide enough for a single person to pass through. Beyond that gap, there was only darkness. Madurai lowered his posture and slipped into it carefully.
Excuse me, coming in.
The sound of feet on sand rippled through the silence. The room was larger than it seemed from the outside, and the only illumination came from the flickering light outside the window, which had little effect on the gloomy dimness covering everything. Spiderwebs spread in every corner of the shed. Opposite the window was a large stack of shelves filled with paint cans. Gravel and dust balls were scattered all over the floor, with cleaning and maintenance tools cluttered here and there. In addition, several large heaps of fertilizer sacks were stacked all around the room.
Hey, I know you're hiding here somewhere.
Madurai's voice echoed through the small room, and suddenly his eyes were drawn to a certain spot. Behind one of the sack heaps, he thought he saw something moving. A small shivering movement, almost as if in response to Madurai's voice.
There she is.
Madurai advanced slowly toward the pile with increased cautiousness. There had to be a trap here somewhere. Many of the tools in this shed could be used as a weapon in the hands of a scared prey. Madurai could see her in his mind, hiding in the darkness, clutching one of them in her trembling hands.
What are you planning?
Raising his voice and staying alert, he moved even closer to the pile of sacks. By the time he reached the middle of the room, his eyes were completely adjusted to the darkness.
Well, if you plan to attack me, go right ahead,
he said in a cruel, flat voice.
But I'm warning you, you will regret it later. You're gonna be in a world of huh!
It was only for a second, but he had no clue what was going on. He felt something exploding on his face, and a moment later, everything around him turned white.
Gah!
Moaning, he half opened his eyes. His surroundings were engulfed in white fog. Take that! The prey, standing in front of his eyes, threw some kind of white lump at him from behind the pile of sacks. As soon as the lump hit Madurai's body, it seemed to burst open and scatter in the air. As soon as the prey finished throwing, she thrust her hand into one of the sacks in front of her, grabbed a large amount of powder from it, and earnestly threw a third lump at him. Take that! And that! Madurai didn't flinch, but he was astounded. This was an attack in name only. A childish quarrel. It was like a snowball fight, using powder instead of snow.
Stupid!
Madurai's face twisted in anger. He got excessively upset at the thought he was being so cautious of what turned out to be nothing but a waste of time.
Whatever. Let's just end this.
The flickering light reflected sharply in Madurai's eyes, when, "Do you know what a dust explosion is?" The girl raised her voice at the exact moment Madurai was about to move. His momentum was cut off, and he stopped instinctively. "What do you think would happen if I start a fire right now?"
What are you?
Right now, the room was completely covered with flying white powder. A certain disturbing image crossed Madurai's mind. He could imagine the fire spreading from one dust particle to the next, igniting them and blowing up the entire shed.
If you do that, it's over for you too.
I thought it's over for me no matter what I do. Upon hearing those words, Madurai remembered his own words. It's impossible to predict what someone in despair will do. Madurai concentrated his eyes on the white fog. He could see the girl's silhouette beyond the dust, but he still couldn't tell what expression was on her face. He brushed off some of the dust from in front of his eyes, and could finally see her face. It was completely blank. Furthermore, her entire body had a strange, intimidating air about it.
Who the hell are you?
It wasn't the face of a frightened prey. Her colorless eyes didn't even twinkle. They were just staring directly at him, unflinching. Madurai's spine shivered.
I don't think you can do it. There's nothing here you can use to start a fire.
The girl stayed silent. The air around Madurai became heavy as a feeling of tension wrapped itself firmly around his body. Dark emotions slowly corroded deep inside his mind.
Who the hell is that girl?
Madurai thought he could see his own shivering self reflected in her colorless eyes.
Should I run away? Try to attack first?
The two options fluttered in rapid succession inside his head. Then suddenly, for just a split second, his victim's eyes moved. Madurai turned by reflex to the point she was looking at, and saw an industrial vacuum cleaner in the middle of the clutter on the floor. Right next to it was a bare electric outlet.
Vacuum cleaner, electric outlet, sparks!
The thought connected inside his brain like an association game. Before he knew it, Madurai started to move. He had no time to hesitate, no margin for caution. He had to get there faster than she could. Madurai took off, almost as if leaping at the vacuum cleaner. He stretched his long arms towards it and grabbed the hose, then pulled it strongly towards him as if he was about to wield it. That was when he felt something was not quite right. There was some resistance when he pulled. Too much resistance. That wasn't all. The girl herself didn't move a single step. He could see her standing still from the corner of his eye, even now that he had the vacuum cleaner in his hand. He even thought he saw her eyes glittering in anticipation.
Oh shit!
The sense that something wasn't right transformed into a single word in Madurai's mind.
Trap.
But it was too late. A large shadow covered Madurai's vision. It was the shadow of the large stack of shelves, inclining slowly towards him. Cans of paint clattered in slow motion as they fell down from the shelves, on their way toward him. The shadow drew nearer. It was already right in front of his eyes. And then, with a thunderous roar and a cloud of dust, Ashiki Madurai was flattened by the fallen shelves.